But don't forget, you're never permitted to admit that you're wrong. That's what creationism is all about.
The Quran is a regurgitation of Semitic traditions. It's just Judaism and Christianity and Arab paganism and a little sprinkling of Zoroastrianism put into a blender. I mean, there's really quite a lack of originality. Even, you know, the name Allah comes from a Semitic deity, and it's just pretty obvious that all of those stories and anecdotes, and even much of the prose, even though they claim it's originally unique and divine, it's all a rerun from other things. It's just one of the earliest truly syncretic religions, actually, that just sort of mix, you know, like Santeria in the Caribbean, just takes different religions and sort of crams them together, rolls them up into a ball of dough.
Welcome to the show, Sarisa. How can we help you, sir?
Yeah, hi. First of all, I want to ask, can everyone hear / see me?
Yes.
Everyone? Yes. Okay, cool. Excellent. Well, it's kind of an expansion on the last question that was asked by the guy before you, Joel, I think his name was. Anyway, I'm currently, at the moment, because I'm a bit of an idiot, involved in something of an altercation with a self-confessed self-confessed creationist by the name of Chad Elliott, and I've already busted this out on him, hoping that this might make some sort of impact. But if, say, for example, we take the age of the human race, like we'll go with the smallest possible number, it's like 100,000 years that the recognizably modern human race has been on the planet. There's been an estimated 63,000 different religious systems on the planet during that time. Now, if we then consider that there are only an estimated 4,200 religious systems on the planet now, your first problem is you've got 58,800 different religious systems that have, by definition, died. No one is worshipping those anymore. Right? Those have been consigned to the charming little shelf of history marked myth and legend. So that's one of your first problems. The second problem is, like, as far as I'm aware, there is not a single religion that is compatible with another religion. You cannot be a Shintoist or a Hindu at the same time. So by definition, there's 4,199 different faith systems on the planet that are wrong, that are just straight up wrong. But as I was considering this question, something else then hit me. I mean, I think I'm right in saying that there's quite good archaeological evidence for Homo neanderthalis having quite sophisticated systems of religion, or at least sophisticated enough that they mourned their dead and there was ritual about it. So I think that, really boiling the question down to its simplest point, how do we know that any of the religions that were worshipped by Homo neanderthalis aren't in fact the right one?
Well, we don't actually know that Neanderthals had a religion, and we know that they buried their dead and they buried them with flowers, but this may well be because they stunk. I mean, we can't be absolutely sure of anything more than that. It would appear that the oldest religion would have been for the mother goddess. I mean, one of the oldest artifacts you always see is that rotund woman with a giant breast and giant hips. She's very obviously built for child rearing and that sort of thing. She is in artifacts and necropolis and things of that sort that date back well beyond 6,000 years ago, 6 to 12,000 years ago throughout Europe. And if there aren't any semblances of any other religion in that clime at that time, the first religion that you get that still continues today would be Hinduism, and you get the Rig Veda, which I think starts around 4,000 years ago, which is a bit awkward because the Bhagavad Gita says that the whole thing is accounting for a war that happened 5,000 years ago, but I don't know how they justify that. I'm sorry, that was completely off of your question, wasn't it?
Well, it still sort of fits in. I think.
Sorry.
I wanted. Go ahead.
Okay, there is one thing that you said was definitely incorrect, which is that religions are always mutually incompatible. There's a shining example of how that's not actually true in the Javanese peninsula. There's a religion called Abangan, which is a form of aberrant Sharia Islam, which actually integrates parts of Buddhism and Christianity. I think actually part of what we were saying this entire show as well is that Christianity itself is the sort of admixture of Zoroastrian, likely Roman, Greek, and Hebrew beliefs. So when you say things like it's not possible to be a Buddhist and is a Muslim, well, we have actually an example of where they are commingled and mixed together quite fluently.
I've got two other examples for you too. Voodoo and what is it? Chinese ancestor worship. What is practiced in, say, Thailand, for example, is a mixture of Confucianism / Taoism with elements that include tribal gods long forgotten in other areas. And all of these are sort of integrated exactly like they said in Big Trouble in Little China, where they say they take what they want from the different religions and leave the rest. It does seem to be exactly like that.
Well, the thing is, you can never stop people. I mean, there's no rules that we can lay down. There's nothing to take people, and people do this all the time. They'll take two religions with scriptures that are allegedly divine that clearly denounce one another, and yet they'll combine them and say that they're fine. Like, you know those coexist bumper stickers? Have you seen those where like every letter in the word coexist is a religious symbol? I thought, we'll have a lot easier a time coexisting when half the symbols on this bumper sticker are rendered completely meaningless because people have forgotten what they stood for. You know, the whole idea that, well, if we just take all these different religions and make a sloppy Joe out of them, we'll be better off. There's nothing to stop people from doing that, and I guess people typically who are that lenient or casual about it tend to be less obnoxious and aggressive overall with their religious beliefs than people who are dogmatic about one. But strictly speaking, often these scriptures are very clear, and the various prophets and key figures are very clear that these are meant to be incompatible with one another. But what can you do? You can't stop people from taking different aspects and creating new religions. You can't even stop them from doing, like I said, with Islam or even Christianity and Judaism, taking disparate faiths and slapping these aspects together and making a new religion, which isn't this sort of New Age hippie syncretic religion, but a dogmatic syncretic religion, which denounces all other forms, and even goes so far in Islam's case to say all other forms were actually once Islam, but then they became deviant. And this is a refresher course of what the true religion is that the first human beings on Earth allegedly practiced.
And to add to that, I got to bring up another example. Sikhism is exactly that. I mean, Guru Nanak, what was it, 400 years ago or so? I can't remember how long ago he lived. But he said that that God visited him with his revelation, as they all do, to say that neither of the two great religions, by the way, being Hinduism and Islam, Judaism and Christianity, were not popular enough in Punjab to warrant mention. But the two great religions, Islam and Hinduism, were half-truths each. And that God came to give Guru Nanak some sort of combination of these two is exactly what you're talking about, and that's what Sikhism is. And then it presents, okay, now Sikhism is the truth, and now they can get into military conflicts with Muslims and Hindus over their variants of that one truth, even though it's a combination of both of them.
If I could, I'll just briefly in sort of a bit of a defense. I should have really clarified. As far as I'm aware, most religions tend to be incompatible with each other. I mean, I think certainly when you're looking at at least when you're looking at the three great monotheisms of the world, and they largely purport to worship the same God. But I don't think you could necessarily get say your average Christian and your average Muslim, whatever those two terms may well mean, to say, oh yeah, like that's absolutely fine with this. That's absolutely fine that this guy's a Muslim. He's still going to make it to heaven. He's going to say that, well, no, that the two faith systems are incompatible.
Yeah, I think I had to be. I had to be at least, I had to be no older than 10 when I first noticed that the Muslims, the Jews, and the Christians were all worshiping the same God, and yet each of these three religions for the one true God have been at war with each other each since their inception. Something has to be wrong here.
There's a very practical reason why these things are mutually exclusive, and that is any religion that tolerates others is going to rapidly find itself outcompeted by a religion that does not. Right? So this is a practical outgrowth of the evolution of religious belief. They need to be jealous, and they need to be exclusive, and they need to persecute people of different faiths, or they don't progress as memes. They don't move through the population because they're not aggressive enough. Right? So that's why we see the growth of religious belief that is proselytizing. Reinforces class structures and hierarchical power structures, and that claims the one true path. Because if you said, ours is pretty good, that one's pretty good too. You're never gonna compete with a religion that says, do what I say or else.
Well, I don't think that's true. I think that's certainly false in the case of Hinduism, where even now, when they have an influx of Christianity coming in, they've reinterpreted Jesus as being an avatar of Vishnu. I don't think it's true that they can only fight against each other, and that's the only way to win.
The funny thing about Hinduism is it being such an old religion and being so diverse and so detailed. I mean, when something gets to be that old, it has developed an awful lot of decoration to it, and there's an awful lot of embellishment. And so when you get Christianity, it seems like a story that was just hashed out last week. It's not been fully formed. They don't have anywhere near the volume of detail that Hinduism has. And so when the Christians start to present their story, it pales by comparison to what the Hindus have already experienced their entire life. And so it seems like an immature religion. Like you can't even bring that to this culture with the wealth that it has for its ancient traditions.
Lisa.
Yeah, I'd say I disagree with Michael to a degree, or maybe agree with him. I think that it falls on a continuum, religious expression does. From what Aaron is saying about the richness of a religion that has had more time to fully develop itself versus one that's younger and more shallow. But in terms of fundamentalism, I do think that a lot of times it is to a religion's benefit to be more fundamentalist. I think that when you're dealing with questions of a deity and trying to align yourself with a deity and trying to preserve that particular religion, that sometimes the stricter that you can be, the more that you can control people's behavior, the better off you are at growing your religion. And a lot of these religions that tend to be fundamentalist also tend to be more evangelistic, tend to encourage larger families, more offspring. And so I'm a little skeptical of the idea that, I'll say it's not always like that, but I do think that there's definitely something to be said about why fundamentalism continues and why religions would tend to want to veer towards that. But it's definitely on a spectrum, because there's certainly religions that thrive that are not fundamentalist.
And I think you'd have to ask with Hinduism, why aren't there more religions in India? Why is it that Hinduism has completely dominated India? And I think the answer is that they took a dual role of crowding out lesser religious belief, but also this syncretic. They adopted the tribal religions of a lot of different religious beliefs, and of course, Hindu. I don't think was it formally codified? I know we have a resident expert on all things Hinduism, but I gather that it evolved over time by borrowing from a lot of tribal religions as they were sort of absorbed in. And you can do that in a polytheistic religion.
Yeah, somebody just mentioned in the chat room that Hinduism is not one religion, and if I hadn't said so already, I wanted to say that same thing, because you have the Vaishnavites, the Shivites, the Brahmin, the Bhakti, and I think Jain are even a subset of Hinduism. And in fact, in some degrees, Buddhism is a subset of Hinduism. So it's rather like when you look at the Abrahamic religions and how they flowered into 3 distinct sets, or maybe 4 if you include the Baha'i and the Mormon and all of that. Hinduism did much the same thing, and it did so early on.
Just like with the Mediterranean and other polytheistic cultures, it's a bit easier to hold on to a loose confederacy of religious cults when you tolerate the presence of more than one deity, or in the case of Krishna, more than one aspect of a deity. People can be members of these different subsects with a focus on a particular deity or aspect of the deity without leaving the umbrella of Hinduism.
I'm going to move on, if I may, because we've got, I noticed the time, we've got, I think, another 3 callers lined up. So, Sarita, can I thank you very much for the call? Is there anything you'd like to add before I move on?
Literally just one thing. As it's not a complete refutation of everything that it's not a complete refutation of everything that Michael has said. I mean, because a lot of it does make sense. But I think one of the ways that you can see that religions have a tendency to not be compatible with each other and to compete with each other and to crowd each other out and say, like, oh, we are the one true faith, the one true path, etc., etc., etc. One of the best ways that you can see that religion has a tendency to not be compatible with each other is, like the premise of that particular point I had. I mean, there are 58,800, an estimated 58,800 religions which now no longer exist. They're obviously incompatible with the religious systems that do now exist on the face of the planet. That's why no one worships them anymore. That's why no one worships those gods anymore. That's why they've now died.
There's a popular opinion that if you were to take any congregation in any Western Protestant church of any denomination, if you were to take everybody in that congregation and ask them independently to express their beliefs on any given number of subjects, and try not to make it the staple thing that they've already been trained for, that you will find that their beliefs are as variant with the individual. I mean, so that you can't really measure. I mean, there's 58,000 that we've measured thus far, but within any congregation of 50 people, you might have 50 different interpretations. There are people that don't think independently and only believe what they're told, and then there are people that assert whatever they want to believe as if God put that idea in their head, and so that's what they believe is the truth. And to me, it's amazing that you can have 2-3 dozen people gathered around, and all of them talking about the absolute truth, and that God revealed to them the absolute truth, and you can't find any commonality in that absolute truth, even when the people are talking to Jesus himself, and they still come up with a half a dozen different interpretations.